I'm Lindsey Bugbee from The Postman's Knock, and today I'm going to teach you how to learn and create modern pointed pen calligraphy. The idea of this video is to follow along with me. For that reason, I am recommending a very basic compilation of supplies. Now, calligraphy, like anything else, is something that you can add on to, pile on to. So you've got your basics, and then you've just got an infinite amount of other supplies that you can procure. But today we are just sticking to this basic collection. The first thing you're going to need is the How to Create Calligraphy worksheet. This is a worksheet that I designed specifically for calligraphy beginners and specifically for this video. You can find that for download on the TPK website. Okay, very, very important. Print it off on pointed pen friendly paper. So if you can find 32-pound Hewlett-Packard LaserJet premium paper, that is a fantastic paper for this worksheet. Then you will need a straight pen with a universal insert. So universal insert means that this pen has 4 metal petals on the inside of it. We want this pen because it can handle this nib plus a variety of other sizes of nibs. Speaking of nibs, you need the Nico G nib. This is a medium flex nib, which means it's good for beginners. More on that later. And you'll need to insert it in the pen. So go ahead and find the split in the rim of that pen and insert the nib just under the split, so between the split and the metal petals. Push it in until it feels secure, and then it's ready to go. Side note, if you are using a brand new Nico G nib, which I'll bet you are because you're watching this video, you will need to prepare the nib for use. Go ahead and look in the video description to find a tutorial over how to do that. Other supplies you need include a non-fibrous cloth. So I've got my cleaning cloth here, which you can see is very well loved, but you can use anything. What I used to love to do was go to the thrift store, find a men's cotton button-up shirt, cut it up and use it as cleaning cloths for calligraphy. You want to use a non-fibrous cleaning cloth versus a paper towel because paper towel fibers tend to stick in the nib, and oftentimes you won't even see those fibers. The fibers pick up ink, and then that totally sabotages what you're trying to accomplish on the page. The next thing you'll need in order to fill out this worksheet is Sumi or India ink. I prefer Sumi. It is a velvety black ink that's great for beginners. But if all you can find is India, that will work wonderfully as well. Be sure and transfer it to a jar that allows for easy dipping. I've got this exact jar for sale on the TPK website, but you can also use, those little like Bon Maman jam jars or anything that is roughly 1 ounce and screws shut so the ink remains in mint condition when you're not writing. That's good. And then the last thing you will need is cleaning water. So go ahead and grab a mug, fill it up with cleaning water. Any vessel works. You'll need this water to swish off your nib to keep it clean and gunk free as you're writing. There are a couple of other things to keep in mind before you get started. First of all, your personal comfort. Never come to your calligraphy session dressed in clothes that you're not comfortable in. Today I'm wearing a hoodie, I'm wearing sweatpants. I just want to enjoy my session and be able to move freely. If at all possible, wear a long sleeve shirt because you want your arm to be able to glide across the table. Obviously, in a lot of places, you can't pull off the long sleeves, especially in the summer. So if you can just have a spare piece of fabric or paper underneath your arm on the table as you're writing so your arm can glide back, that's a good idea too. Now you can create calligraphy anywhere, but if you have any sort of control over your environment, make it inspiring. You can put up photos or quotes that just make you feel good to look at, have some flowers and a bouquet somewhere. Just make it a place where when you go there, you feel so comfortable and so relaxed, and you're ready to just be open to practicing your calligraphy and working on your skills. On that note of making calligraphy a comfortable experience where you can unload, think about the things that you can bring into your session to make you look forward to practicing, to honing your skills even more. So maybe a cup of herbal tea, a lemonade, something without caffeine because we don't want that shaky hand. You can have some little treats that you can just snack on while you're doing your calligraphy. Of course, today you're following along with this video, so you're just going to have my voice and my face talking at you. But when you're by yourself, think about what you can listen to that's going to help you get into the flow. So do you have an audiobook, a podcast, even a show that you can just put off to the side on your computer? Think about how you can really elevate the experience so you look forward to your creation sessions. All right, so that covers the pre-calligraphy creation basics. Now let's get to actually writing. We're going to start by creating the two most basic strokes in calligraphy, and that's upstrokes and downstrokes. Now I've switched my camera angle here because I want to be able to demo exactly how to do this and make you understand. The most common calligraphy beginner mistake is thinking that this pen works just like the pen that you use every day. So a lot of calligraphy beginners, when they're making a downstroke, they lever up. All right, you see what I'm doing? I start at the top and I lever up. That is not what you're aiming for. What you want to do is grip your calligraphy pen just like this. So you've got your thumb here on the left, you've got your index finger on top, and then your middle finger is supporting the pen on the bottom. And the lefties are going to mirror this view, okay? The grip is very important because you are constantly pushing and pulling the pen. The pen is never levering up. Your finger position should not change dramatically. If it changes at all, it's just by a little tiny bit. So just remember as you're writing, it is a push and pull. And we talked about that with the long sleeves. And a lot of tutorials, calligraphers will tell you write with your whole arm. And a lot of people take that to mean, okay, I need to elevate my arm and pull it back. No, you keep your arm on the table, but you want to make sure that the arm can move freely. So that's where our long sleeves come in, or a piece of fabric underneath our forearm. So again, to make a downstroke, you're going to pull down, and then for an upstroke, you're going to push up. Now let's go ahead and fill out this section together. What you've got here are the demos for your downstrokes and your upstrokes. The way that a downstroke works is you apply pressure to your nib and the two tines split open. Then you pull the nib back, continuing to apply that pressure with those tines split open. Since the tines are split open, the ink is going to fill in the gap and you're going to have a thicker stroke just like this. Now for upstrokes, you can't apply that pressure to the nib and push it up. It's impossible. So you have to ease up on the pressure, just apply minimal pressure and push up. Now here you can see that you have this thick downstroke, and then these arrows show you, okay, start here and pull down. And then you have a thin upstroke, and these arrows tell you start here and push up. That's what we're going to do for the rest of this drill. One of the cardinal rules of calligraphy is no moisture should ever get up in here. So make sure that you only dip to just about this hole in the center called the reservoir. All right, I am not terribly concerned about your dipping level as long as you just don't go above the reservoir. There's no hard and fast rule about exactly how far to dip. So go ahead and dip, and then give your pen a little shake over the ink to make sure you encourage any excess ink off of there. and then go ahead and pull down to make that thick downstroke. All right, then push up, then pull down. Okay, the glasses are coming on because I really mean business here. And you'll want to just continue with that upstroke, downstroke pattern, adjusting as you need to rotate the paper, and just make sure that you have a really nice, comfortable writing position. You'll want to pay special attention to applying balanced, even pressure to both tines of the nib on the downstroke. And if you don't achieve a really dramatic stroke contrast, that's okay. I want you to remember that when I created this calligraphy, I used a much more flexible nib and a different pen. You can see that these tines really split apart. So that gave me a lot more contrast than I'm able to make with a medium flex nib like today's Nico G. Oop. So what happened here is called railroading. It's definitely going to happen to you. Essentially, we ran out of ink on the tines of the nib, so each tine started working by itself to make a railroad. All you do to fix that, dip the nib into ink again and pull down. You just start where you left off. Notice how I'm pushing and pulling the pen. I am not levering. So let's explore what happens when you do lever. So what happened was I got a fiber in my nib because I was being aggressive with the paper. I ran out of ink a lot quicker and got some railroading. This is just not going to be effective. You have to make sure that you're pulling and pushing, never levering or going up like this. Try your best to make sure that your strokes are parallel to what we call slant lines. So these are just guidelines to help you ensure that you're making consistent strokes, which really helps when you're drawing words. But when we're making these isolated upstrokes, this is not something that you're going to run into terribly often in calligraphy. It's an amazing exercise, an amazing drill. And of course, the straighter upright you can get these upstrokes, the better. But if you can't, that's okay. What I'm really wanting you to focus on here is achieving a contrast between your upstrokes and your downstrokes. See, I can't even make like a perfectly straight line every time. Be sure too that on these downstrokes, you're being gentle. To be fully transparent with you, I actually had to refilm this because I was doing my upstrokes and my downstrokes were just feathering terribly. So feathering is a term that means your ink is essentially being really fuzzy around the edges. It's not super clean. And I just thought, why is it doing this? What is going on here? And that's when I realized I was just pressing way too hard on the downstrokes and distressing the paper. So if that's happening to you, just accept the fact that your downstrokes aren't going to be as thick with this nib and let up on that pressure. This is a great exercise to help you really get into that relaxed state. You're just focusing on pulling the pen down and pushing it up. A lot of times I notice, and you might be doing this, for the upstrokes, people go out to the side here and write like this. I know that this achieves what you want to achieve, but don't do that because that's not practical for when you apply these skills to real life writing. So actually writing out a letter, because you can't change your pen position as you're writing. You want to make sure that your hand is actually static. You'll notice that every few strokes, I'm swishing off my nib in water. Just like with ink, you don't want to get any water up in your actual pen. That's going to cause rusting and will effectively glue the nib into the pen, which we don't want because these nibs are disposable. You're going to have to switch them out as they wear out. So make sure that you don't get water up in there, but do get that gunky ink off of the nib, because when you start to notice that it's getting a little harder to write, getting more difficult to achieve those thin upstrokes, that means that the water is evaporating out of the ink on the nib and just impeding the flow of the new ink. So all you have to do is swish that ink off in water, use your cleaning cloth to get the water off, and then keep writing. Now, after you do these upstrokes and downstrokes, you're going to do the crossover drill. So this is a helpful drill because, of course, a lot of letters have loops just like this. Might take some experimentation to see what the best paper rotation is for making these. I'm going to try this right here. Horizontal strokes are always thin, just like upstrokes. And then as you pull that pen down, apply pressure to make a thicker downstroke. And apply pressure. If you need to take a little break to reposition your hand or reposition yourself, stroke junctures where two strokes intersect are a great place to just stop, recompose yourself, maybe put more ink on the nib, and then continue. Now let's talk about your posture and your breathing. I think no matter who you are and how long you've been doing calligraphy, you always end up getting closer and closer and closer until you have a hunched back. So you need to make sure that you constantly are pulling yourself back. You're making sure that you have that nice long spine, good posture, so you can write for longer and that your body can really handle the experience and enjoy the experience. Also make sure that you're writing slow. This is not a quick thing. So when many beginners start calligraphy, they try to write calligraphy just as quickly as they write in everyday life. But if we do that, this is what happens. You see that this stroke looks a lot more intentional, where this one, you've got some weirdness going on here with this hesitant loop up, and then the downstroke tapering just isn't clean at all. So really try to remind yourself, calligraphy is not handwriting. You need to slow down and remember that this is a very intentional activity. Once you're finished creating these crossover drills, we're going to apply what we learned making these two drills in order to create an alphabet of uppercase letters. What I did for this worksheet set after a lot of deliberation is I decided to provide you with the most popular beginner calligraphy alphabet on the TPK website. So that's Amy Style Calligraphy. It is an upright calligraphy style, so it's easy to create with a straight pen versus an oblique pen, which is a whole other thing that we won't talk about today, but makes it easy to create with basic supplies. This sort of right-leaning calligraphy is gorgeous, but it's a little more advanced. I think that the upright slant of Amy Style Calligraphy is much more realistic for a beginner. So that's why we are going to create Amy Style Calligraphy. You can look on the website to find the story of Amy Style Calligraphy if you're curious. But today we're just going to make it together. So what you're going to do is observe this first black letter. This is how the letter should look. Observe the second black letter to see the letter's formation, and then trace over the third one and make your own. This is going to require some experimentation as far as the paper rotation, what is comfortable for you, especially since we're starting at the bottom of the page here. Make sure you have your calligraphy more scooted forward on your work surface. And for this A, you're going to start at the dot, loop up, and pull down, then loop up again, and then make your horizontal stroke. And then go again. Actually, this starts with a downstroke, so an option is to make the downstroke thick, just like I did in the example. Then downstroke again. And go over to make that horizontal stroke. Crosses on letters are almost always horizontal strokes, so those are always thin. For the B, going to go up with that thin upstroke, pull down for the downstroke, and then up for the upstroke, down, downstroke, then horizontal stroke, downstroke, whoop, railroading, pull up and over, and then you do it yourself. So if you're having trouble, reference this letter. Okay, I start here, go down, and then up, over, down, down, and over. And then for the C, you start right here, and then just go ahead and make your own version here. And then once you finish page 1, you're off to page 2. Make sure that you have padding paper underneath the paper that you're working on. This makes it a lot easier to achieve that stroke contrast. And be sure to use the slant lines that are provided to you. Those are here to help you make nice straight strokes. And in fact, many calligraphers, myself included, draw these pencil lines on the paper that they're using and then erase them after they're done creating the calligraphy. It really helps you in order to make those consistent vertical strokes. Every once in a while, you can't see it, but I noticed that I picked up some paper fiber on my nib. You'll know it because it looks like a little accent mark or something. It's coming off of the nib, so make sure to wipe that off and get the fiber off. Usually happens after downstrokes because you might be digging into that paper on accident. With this Nico G nib, actually at the current level I'm at, I find it more difficult to use than higher flex nibs. But I recommend it for beginners because it really lets you work out any pressure issues that you have. So for more flexible nibs, like this Browse Extra Fine 66, it is so easy to snap these tines because they are so flexible. So beginners have the potential to damage that nib. This nib can really ride out any pressure woes that you're having. So if you are applying too much pressure to the nib, it takes a whole heck of a lot before it actually reacts in a negative way. But the downside of this nib is that the stroke contrast just isn't as rich. Actually, this nib was designed for manga artists. It's a Japanese manga nib. So if you like illustration, it is a great nib to try illustrating things with. Now you'll notice on more dramatic downstrokes, I use my entire arm noticeably. For shorter strokes, it's more my hand and my wrist. Now I do encourage you to follow along with me for this video in its entirety to get the most benefit from it. and tips for making these letters. If you cannot stick around for this whole time, come back to the video to finish up the worksheet. That way you will reap the full benefit of this. Will you learn everything in today's video? No, that's just, not possible in the amount of time that we have. I do have a beginner's course. Look at the reviews. People have really, really thrived in it. And that will teach you everything there is to know about calligraphy fundamentals, including how to use that funny looking pen that I showed you about with the nib offset to the side. And that course gives you a deeper look into how to create this calligraphy style, how to create a slanted style, and how to create copperplate calligraphy. So if you know anything about pointed pen calligraphy, you know that copperplate is a traditional calligraphy style, right leaning, and that's just a beautiful one to have in your back pocket. So certainly consider that online course if you are enjoying your time with me today. I've also got a book that I just wrote with DK, Penguin Random House, about pointed pen calligraphy. You can either pre-order the book or you might be able to just go ahead and order it. It is absolutely fabulous. I worked with a really big team on the book. Lots of examples of gorgeous calligraphy that make you want to stop what you're doing and create. It has this alphabet style in it. It's a coffee table book though, so it's not like you'll open it and practice, but we do have worksheets available on the website to really master the calligraphy styles that TPK has to offer. So definitely check that book out. It's called The Calligraphy Book by Lindsey Bugbee. Just a really, really neat project. Now I'm just watching my hand movement here, and there is just a little bit of finger movement, but those finger movements should be micro finger movements. It is nothing like when you use a regular pen. So if you're noticing that your fingers are moving quite a bit, it's okay if you're moving them a little bit, but dramatically, you need to do something different. And you can pause this video as needed to focus on the specific letters. I'm really just showing you what to do rather than explaining the formation. So be sure to look at what I'm doing. Like on this K, of course I started on the left, moved over to that top right stroke, finished with the bottom right stroke. And one thing I want to point out about pointed pen calligraphy is most people start calligraphy with the end in mind. So what they're looking for is the result. I am going to learn how to make breathtaking letters that I can then connect in order to make words. But what you don't end up realizing is that the result is the smallest piece of the puzzle. What ends up getting people hooked on calligraphy is not the result, not the ability to make beautiful letters. It's the feeling that gets you coming back to your desk. What happens is you realize that calligraphy is a very therapeutic activity. I cannot tell you how many readers I have heard from with really sad but compelling stories. Calligraphy has gotten so many people through so many different situations. I've heard from a lot of people who have a loved one who is undergoing cancer treatments, or they themselves are undergoing cancer treatments. recovering from surgery, recovering from emotional trauma. And calligraphy as an activity is very calming and very mellow. It doesn't really allow you the extra time to ruminate on things. It's something where you have to really focus on what you're doing in order to get it right. So it's a really sort of meditative activity that ends up feeling very cleansing. I mean, I think it's telling that for me, calligraphy is a job. You know, I just spent a year writing the calligraphy book. And even though it's my job, at the end of the day, when my husband would say, hey, I'll watch the kids, you decompress, what was it I wanted to do? I came back to my desk and I would make calligraphy projects for fun, especially mail art. I love to make a really beautiful envelope. Now, side note, on letters like this in, I gave you enough space to practice it a couple of extra times. So take advantage of that extra space to really get in that nice practice. If you really like this style and you want to learn with the full worksheet set, that actually provides a printable practice, like a whole page of the letter if a letter is giving you grief, or a word too. So that is a really good resource if you want to go dive deep into your learning. You also want to keep your breathing in mind as you're working on these letters. So many times when we're learning something new, we just don't breathe. And regular breathing is really going to help you to ensure that these letters look nice and smooth. So just check yourself, make sure that you're nice and calm. This activity should definitely relax rather than frustrate. So if it is frustrating you, take a step back and ask yourself, why? Are the letters just not looking how you want them to? Are they feathering? If they're feathering, why do you think they're feathering? Experiment with different pen angles. If you're holding the pen too upright, you can always experience some troubles with that, especially when it comes to making downstrokes. So you might need to lever down to adjust. It's a nice opportunity to stop because I think I got a fiber in my nib here. And one of the things I love about modern pointed pen calligraphy versus a traditional style like copperplate is you can really make it your own. You can see that this is a thick downstroke in my example, but today I just wanted to go for the thin horizontal stroke, so I did that. And if there's a letter that you're just not really jiving with, you know, make it differently. That's okay. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened here with the R and that ink, especially because I don't have any ink on my hand. But remember that this is just practice, and that's the beauty of practice. The end reward is your satisfaction of a worksheet that has been filled out. It is not meant to look perfect. It is here for your skill improvement and your relaxation. So don't stress out if it doesn't look immaculate. This is just you growing in your calligraphy skills. These Amy style S's are notorious for not being the most fun for beginners, so just take them slow, pull that downstroke down, and then nice thin stroke over. Try it on your own. If you don't end up jiving with these, then you can always make more of a cursive style, you know, like triangle shaped S. But I think these are fun. If nothing else, I hope that you pick up from this video that the writing pace should be quite slow. This is not a speed contest. A lot of times when you see calligraphers, myself included, post things on social media, we know that you don't want to sit there and watch us write out a word for 5 minutes. It's much more satisfying to see it come together in 30 seconds. So we often speed up the video, which is fun to watch, but it perpetuates that insecurity in a beginner that they should be producing these lovely letters at a very fast pace, and that's simply not true. Notice that at various points in writing, I have rotated my paper quite severely. You really need to feel free to experiment with your paper angle and go with whatever works best for you to give you a nice, comfortable writing angle that also facilitates exerting balanced pressure to both tines of those nibs. And again, as we get close to the end of the page, you can push the page up. I like to hold my pen further down on the barrel to ensure that I can exert localized pressure to the nib. And then for the W, you've got a downstroke, and an upstroke, and a downstroke, an upstroke. Now this X is interesting because up to this point, I've told you every time you have a downstroke, you apply pressure. But actually on the X, I just draw in the downstroke manually, and I don't apply the pressure to that. Obviously the whole thing is manual, but you get my meaning here. You don't apply pressure to the downstroke, otherwise you wouldn't have any stroke contrast within this letter. I want you to remember that this worksheet is just a small sampling of what is available on the TPK website. So this is just uppercase letters and then a couple of select lowercase letters, so you can write a couple of words. But if you really want to master this calligraphy style, you'll need the full worksheet set or take the beginner's course to really get a handle on the foundations. People ask me what the difference is between the beginner's course and the Amy Style calligraphy worksheet, and I say, you know, I chose styles, calligraphy styles to use in the beginner's course, but only as a means to show you the basics of calligraphy. So the course focuses more on the technique and how to form letters in general, and it has to use a calligraphy style in order to do that. So I chose a variety of styles to demo. But if you really want to dive deep into those styles and master them, then you can use the worksheets on the TPK website to do that. Now here are these lowercase letters that I told you about. Same thing. What you're going to do with the E is start with this little guy and then go up and downstroke, entry stroke, up and downstroke, and then you start with the downstroke here, upstroke, over, downstroke, upstroke, over. You'll notice that since these letters are quite small, just a lot more of my hand and wrist is going into drawing them versus my entire arm. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, given that beginners are told use your entire arm to write. Yes, that is accurate advice, but at times you're just using the hand and the wrist, and then to an extent the forearm, especially for smaller letters. And there we go. If you've made it this far, well done. We're going to finish up by working on a couple of words, and then I'll give you parting advice, and hopefully you'll decide that calligraphy is something that you want to pursue. Again, move your paper, rotate it so that you get a good writing angle, and then just trace directly over these words. Pull this down for the downstroke, then loop over. You'll notice that there aren't arrows, so you'll need to just watch what I'm doing. Of course, TPK worksheets include directional arrows for everything. This is just a little sample worksheet that I put together to help you see if you like calligraphy. I'm doing this again to show you the order, just in case you missed it the first time. Also, I think it's helpful when you can trace directly over letters with the thick downstroke to remind yourself, oh, I need to apply pressure at that point. Now you know the stroke formation order at this point, so what I'm going to do is something kind of fun. I'm going to write the word with my Nico G, and then I will show you what it looks like with a more flexible nib. So I'm going to speed this up. So there's our Nico G word. And then I'm going to use the Browse Extra Fine 66 nib, which is funny because look at how teeny tiny this nib is compared to this nib, but this nib is better for stroke contrast and bigger letters, actually. Okay, so do you see the massive difference between these two nibs? This is what I'm talking about when I say, okay, you've got these basic supplies that you can start with, and then you just add on to your supply collection in order to find the nibs, the pens, the inks that are your favorites. For me, I feel much more comfortable writing with that Browse Extra Fine 66 nib in an oblique pen, which is funny because, again, I told you I'm not gonna say like much about the oblique because I don't want to dilute the point of this video, but the oblique pen is designed to give right-handed people an advantage when writing a right-leaning slant. That's actually kind of difficult for us. So the pen puts the nib off to the side at an offset angle, and that makes it easier for us to write a right-leaning slant. And actually in the beginner's course, I do a lot with the right oblique pen because using that is such an aha moment for beginning calligraphers. You would think that this straight pen would be very easy to use because it more or less looks like what we're used to using in everyday life, but actually far and away for right-handed learners, that oblique pen is going to be easier to write with. And for me, I find that it's even easier when I don't have a right-leaning slant, maybe just because I use it so much. And I know that if you're left-handed, you have gone through this video saying, well, she's prattling on and on about right-handed people, what about me? You lefties actually have a built-in oblique pen with your left hand because, you know, you're coming from the left and slanting to the right, so you usually don't need a left oblique. I'm going to try writing this on my own, though sometimes, every once in a while, a reader will write to me and say, hey, I'm left-handed and I feel like I would just be able to see what I'm writing a whole lot better if I were to use a left oblique pen. And in that case, I think that you know, it's definitely worth a try. And just for good measure and comparison, I'll do something with that extra fine 66 nib again. Once you finish this practice here, you can do whatever you want here on the bottom of page 3. Just for fun, I'm going to write out a quote and speed it up so you can see it come together quickly. But this is the type of thing that you might decide to do. So whatever you want to write, whatever drills or loops you want to make, this is just a nice blank area for that. Your worksheet concludes on page 4 with a list of premium resources, free resources, and all the places to find TPK online. I hope that you find this page just as helpful as the practice pages. Be sure to look at it on your PDF reader, on your computer or iPad, so you can click on the links inside of that page. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching this video, for sticking with me as you filled out that worksheet set. Calligraphy, and pointed pen calligraphy in particular, is not an activity for the faint of heart. There are so many mechanics to remember as you're writing, so you should give yourself a huge pat on the back for sticking with it and giving it the old college try. If any of this resonated with you, truly consider taking the Beginner's Modern Calligraphy online course on the Postman's Knock, because that's going to clarify any questions you might have had as you worked through this. It's going to show you how to use that oblique calligraphy pen. It's going to demo more calligraphy styles. Great resource for beginners. Also consider checking out the calligraphy book. That was my baby of a project. Really gorgeous book that's going to inspire you to continue creating. Please know that the Postman's Knock blog is here to support you in all of your calligraphy endeavors. Go over there, read the articles, follow the tutorials. It is just a playground for people who are interested in pointed pen calligraphy. And of course, feel free to peruse the YouTube channel a little bit. I've got several demo videos that are fun for calligraphy enthusiasts. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.